Today I made over $3,000 shorting ES in just about 30 minutes. Let's get right into the trade and why I took it. So the first thing I liked about the ES short was that we had a very solid draw on liquidity to the downside. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, look at this. We have exact equal lows to the tick at 68.05, several days apart on the 1 hour chart. On top of that, we also have this swing low right here, which coincides with a daily bearish fair value gap low, right? So we have this low inside of a daily, bullish gap, right? So I call that an imbalanced low. That's a great draw on liquidity. So now we get to the actual short and why I liked it. So I had very clear targets. We didn't actually end up hitting them, but I did make a lot of money on this trade still. I'll end up telling you guys why I exited before these even hit and why they might not have even hit in the first place, right? So I was targeting the equal lows. What I really liked about this setup was that we had this massive bearish fair value gap that we had put in place on Friday, and we had this swing high inside of it. So you guys know, whenever we sweep out a swing high inside of a bearish gap, I call it an imbalance high, right? Because it's a high inside of an imbalance. That's an extremely good spot to start to look for a reversal. And if you can combine that with a good draw on liquidity or target to the downside, then it's going to be money, right? So that's exactly what we had. We made our way up on pretty low volume all night, overnight, and then we started to completely stall during London session. And if you look on the 1 minute chart, right when New York was about to open, we actually put in a crazy good IFVG, right? And I actually did not enter the trade here. Normally I would have, but I was on the shitter. I usually don't have to at that time of day, but whatever reason, it was just one of those days. So, but I noticed anyway, we have this internal manipulation, right? We have this internal manipulation. We sweep out this buy side. We have this inversion gap put in. And now I'm very bearish after seeing all that, even though I'm on the shitter and I only like to execute trades on my PC. But I'm very bearish. So at this point, I'm kind of just hoping to find a way to be part of this move before we take at least the London lows. Because whenever you have London low untaken like that, it's usually going to be a first target or a good first target for any short you have, right? That's going to be a good way to let price ride down to that. And then from there on out, you can kind of just see. So my first plan was always to take off a contract at London lows and then to take my final contract off at these equal lows at 68.05. So where was my entry? All right, well, now that you guys know we're delivering out of a bearish gap, obviously we have swept out a swing high inside of it, right? On the 1 hour, we swept out this swing high right here, but we also swept out this internal high, right? We have this 1 minute manipulation. So once we open, we look super bearish, right? We create this bear gap right here. We instantly start to reject it, right? So it looks like we're going to have some pretty big sell-off here. And then we create another bearish gap. We end up coming right back up to it, retesting it, and immediately rejecting it, right? So right here at 938 is where I entered the trade because we had also created a bullish gap on that retest of this bearish gap. And we come down and displace right back through it. So at this point, I'm very bearish. And my target is going to obviously be the London lows, right? And I get in right here. My stop loss is going to be a disrespect of this bearish gap right here. So the original trade is about a 1.3 to 1, but obviously if you go to the final target, it'd be about a 5 to 1, which is really good. Now, the thing with this trade is that you need to understand just because you have the, delivery out of a higher time frame gap and you've swept liquidity and you have an obvious draw to the downside doesn't mean price has to continue down then and there. Usually it will end up taking out that draw on liquidity if it is really good, but it doesn't mean you're going to be able to time it on the 1 minute chart. So that's why my stop was above this, bearish gap, right? Because the bear gap had rejected us once. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, if we get an inversion of this gap that I'm expecting to hold, it would appear that by that point, we wouldn't quite be ready to make our way down to that sell side liquidity. Right? So you have to have an open mind. You have to be dynamic when it comes to your ability to set your stops and understand conditions, right? Because like I said, if this gap gets respected, then I think we're going to go down to London lows and possibly those equal lows. If this gap gets disrespected, then we're probably just going to make a run up all day. So that's kind of how I thought. So I ended up taking my first contract off at about 1.3 to 1. And then my second contract, I ended up taking it off around 10.20. Now, we never hit my final TP, right? But if you look, we get very close to the low of day. We don't show much continuation down to that. And then on top of that all, if you look at the NQ chart, and I'll go right now onto it. If you look at NQ, by 10:20, right, because this is about when we made the lows, like 10:20, 10:25 on ES. If you look at NQ, by 10:20, we had already taken overnight lows, right? We had already taken those overnight lows out, and at this point now, we have an SMT because NQ took out the lows, ES did not. So we have an external SMT between ES and NQ, and whenever that happens, I like to just get out of the trade because there's always the chance that we get a brutal reversal to the upside, which didn't really happen today. I guess it kind of happened for like half an hour, but it didn't really stick. Either way, learn to identify when your draw on liquidity is potentially a victim of like an SMT like we had here today. Now, with this specific case, I actually like that we did that because I still got out near the low of day for ES. And I actually think the draw on liquidity still being in play is kind of an advantage, right? Because we can reshort that. If you look, and now I'm kind of just projecting, but if you look right here, we formed another 1 hour bear gap today. So who's to say we can't get a retrace into that, take out that swing high that we made, and then come back down and take it all out, right? So there could be still a really good short setup on the table, which is why I'm not upset that the final target didn't hit. Especially because I was able to recognize when to, jump ship and get out. And it was kind of difficult to time it perfectly because I was also trading on my funded futures accounts, right? I had some 50Ks on there that I'm trading. But either way, like I said, it was a pretty good sell-off that I was able to catch most of, thankfully. And it created a pretty big day, right? Up about 3K across all my accounts. Most of it on this one because this is where I size heaviest because it's the 150K. And I do have other accounts on Top Step, but I'm not able to copy trade them with this 150K because of the margin requirements and like the difference in leverage I can have. So for whatever reason, it doesn't allow me to copy trade them. I'm not sure if that's a mistake or if that's just how it's supposed to be, but yeah, that's what it is. So if you guys enjoyed this video and this trade breakdown, make sure to like the video and subscribe. Join my free trading Discord as well. I post a lot of stuff in there to help you guys all out, daily bias videos, things like that, right? We have a community and I answer any questions that come my way in there. So with that being said, I appreciate you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.